In a world in where mutation has brought about the next step of human evolution, Charles Xavier's X-Men clash with Eric Lensher's Brotherhood over how best to deal with the discrimination against the humans. The war between humans and mutants is imminent. This is my uneducated opinion on the movie X-Men. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm not going to talk about the director, Bryan Singer, because just no, ew. If you were to start discussing with other people about some of the best openings to any comic book movie or movie in general, you'd end up talking about this one. This being the introduction to one of the most iconic, if not all-round best villains in comic book history. I love the fact this barely has any focused dialogue at all, and it is an incredibly visually disturbing scene to go through. It sets up perfectly the stance Magneto has against the humans and the conflicts going forward. It's what makes him such a complex villain, as at times you can't really argue against the points he makes. I genuinely don't think that there is a bad casting choice in this movie, and maybe the whole of the franchise going forward. There may be a bad one that comes up in another video that I do later on, but from what I remember, it is nigh on perfect. So the cast includes Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, Halle Berry, Famke Janssen, James Marsden, Bruce Davison, Rebecca Romijn, Ray Park, and Anna Paquin. The standout cast members for me has got to be Patrick Stewart as Xavier, Magneto being played by Ian McKellen, and Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine. And I specifically love the conflict between Xavier and Magneto through this movie. They hold back for the most part as there's this mutual respect between the two. And also I love that Charles has this understanding of what Magneto has gone through in the Holocaust, so he's always trying to reason with him throughout. Hugh Jackman, not being the huge jacked man as we all know and love today, he was cast 3 weeks into filming as he was not the first choice to play Wolverine. Dougray Scott was originally cast, but due to scheduling conflicts he had with Mission Impossible 2, he had to back out of the project. When it comes to the other characters, the problems for me is more in the representation and how they develop or lack thereof in the later movies. And most notably, Cyclops doesn't seem too interesting for me. He's portrayed by James Marsden, who I generally think is a really good choice to play the character. It's just that he's supposed to be the next leader of the X-Men, and you'd think that with him having that role, he should have a pretty big presence amongst the other characters, which I don't feel he has. Other than maybe one scene in a museum, I don't feel as though Storm's powers are shown off enough to say that she is this Omega level mutant in comparison to what she is in the comics. However, I would say that that's probably more on the budget of the movie and the fact that it's more focused on the characterization and the themes and not necessarily more the action sequences. The character of Storm, though, played by Halle Berry, is great though. I really like how she is so empathetic towards everyone, and even towards the end of the movie, she's really empathetic towards the character Robert Kelly, played by Bruce Davison, after all the negativity that he has contributed towards the mutants. Anna Paquin as Rogue, I feel, is great in this movie, and I find it fascinating how she is essentially the main focus, following her wanting to learn more about the mutations she has and find solace in other people, and having a mutation that is incredibly isolating. It is brilliant. I have not read an extensive amount of X-Men comics or even watched the animated series, which, from what I understand, is near enough a perfect depiction of the X-Men characters. This movie does really well in interpreting the original ideas had for the mutants, representing minorities and those who are subject to severe discrimination. Most of them are introduced as just normal people trying to live ordinary lives, and only to showcase their powers through protecting themselves or by complete accident by them first discovering their abilities in high stress situations and going through puberty. Like mentioned before, there is a lot of differences of opinions which causes the conflict between the mutants themselves. You can definitely see why some of them would rather be normal humans, because the mutations that they have cause so much negativity with the likes of Rogue and Logan. I also really love the subtle environmental effects that happen as a result of the mutants. For example, you have Magneto just casually having the Newton's cradle swinging in the background, and Sabretooth's hair just standing up due to the electricity and the weather Storm is causing. The flashback scenes of the Weapon X program is truly horrifying, and a genius way of telling Wolverine's backstory, to the point where I wish they just didn't make the movie X-Men Origins Wolverine, not only because that movie was just god-awful, but the backstory from this movie and the sequel was told and explored well enough, and leaving the horrors of that experiment to the audience's imagination would have been way more effective. So the costumes in this movie are good for the most part. They do the job, and it's certainly around that time where everything had to be dark and broody and edgy, and everything had to be in black leather because the Matrix had just come out in Blade and they were very well received. But in response to the question,
what would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Well, yeah, obviously. Fucking put them in yellow spandex. I want to see that in all my glory. Give it to me. And that goes into the dialogue in this movie, which I feel as though is good for the most part. I'm obviously really intrigued in the politics and the conflict in between the humans and the mutants. But when it gets into the interpersonal relationships between some of the characters, it's... well, let's just say it's pretty lacking. The whole love triangle in between Jean, Scott, and Logan, I was not invested in the slightest. I'm not interested at all in that. I don't know why they kept on trying to push that in between the later movies as well. And let's not forget the greatest, most impactful quote in cinema history.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else.
What does that even mean? Just say nothing. That would have been way more effective. And it's really nice to know that Ke Huy Quan was involved somewhat in this movie. He acted as an assistant fight choreographer during the production, and that goes to say that the action in this movie is good. It does the job. There's no, like, outstanding moment that is embedded in my mind, but for the most part, the movie does a really good job at showcasing the abilities and the fighting styles in between each of the characters. So overall, a really strong setup for this movie and the franchise that comes after it, and it definitely shows what the X-Men were about. You can see why that this is one of the most popular IPs in comic history. So the budget of this movie was approximately $75 million, which is a fairly decent chunk of size for a debut movie in a franchise. And at the box office worldwide, this movie just grossed under $300 million. I don't think anyone had any idea that this was going to end up making a total of about 13 movies. I'm not going to be counting Deadpool 3 because now that is part of the MCU and it's in its own pocket of space. And I know Hugh Jackman's coming back, but that seems separate from this franchise now on. And just like with every other Uneducated Opinion video, we're going to be watching the trailer to see if it's any good.
Whatever you do, don't hit him in the balls. You said anything goes.
Okay, so that was most certainly a trailer. I mean, it was good. It didn't give away too much. It explained all the characters that were going to be involved. Included a little bit too much fighting sequences towards the middle to the end of it, but wow, that was dated. Oh my god, you could definitely tell that was sort of late 90s when that came out. But hey, did the job. Certainly not for me though. And I think that's about it. Thank you everybody so much for watching another Uneducated Opinion video. If you liked it, give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike. Comment down below what you thought of the movie. Did you like it? Did you not? Give me constructive feedback of what I could do better for next time. Share around with your friends and family if you think they'd enjoy this sort of content. Subscribe. Ding the notification bell. If you'd like to see more of me, I stream on Twitch. Twitch.tv/Rizikins. I play single player games and I play games also with my girlfriend Jem and my good friend Rezi. Hope to see you there very soon. And I think that's about it. Right, take care. See you soon. Goodbye.